Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while, hasn't it? This is a first look and very much a rough cut of the new Federation carrier, the Atrox class. And on the subject of looks, yes, it's got some unfortunate resemblances from certain angles. Given that in background it was built by a race of cat people, the Caitians, I imagine the furry jokes are only a matter of time. I also imagine that you're going to see a lot of kitty-related puns. I've just put in possibly the first. It's an appalling shout-out, both to the fact that it's carrier and to a certain other cat-related series. But since this thing came named as the USS Rainbow out of the shop, I submit the defence of necessity. Anyway, first shock for those of you who are used to anything other than the heaviest of cruisers. This thing handles like a Vauquois, which means it takes about 8 kilometers to stop. Oh god, where did they leave the brakes when they designed this thing? So yeah, I'm far closer to that cube than I intended. Its shield's down, it's about to explode and I'm less than a mile from it. This is going to hurt. I don't have polarised hull, so I can't get clear of those tractors. There goes the second explosion, and I'm on fire. Boom. There goes the warranty. Yes, not quite 2 minutes since I left Starbase 1, and this thing's a smoky thing. Anyway, that's how you don't handle one of these ships. The idea is that you stand off and you maintain your range while you send in the fighters to do the close work. Or better yet, send in someone else's fighters or someone else's starship to do the close work. Much safer. This is definitely a ship for those of us who regard close-in combat as ungentlemanly, uncivilized, too damn dangerous by half. Things like that. Weapons fit, as you can see, is 3 forward, 3 aft. By default, out of the shop, you get 2 Tetrion beam arrays and a quantum tube fore and aft. It's all Mark 8, it's all white grade gear, so obviously first thing I did was to gut it all out and replace it with the Mark 11, Mark 12 phaser and photon torps that I've been using on the Intrepid for the last few months. The fighters themselves have a Tetrion beam array and a nice little ability that, well, you can see the little blue torpedoes that fire off. Those will basically drain auxiliary power from whatever they hit. So while that's not necessarily a wild difference in PvE, and I wasn't expecting to get that accolade, apparently fighter damage counts towards your damage dealt. Well, hey, not complaining. Whilst it's not a major issue in PvE, you could certainly mess up a science ship or another carrier in PvP and basically shut down or at least heavily derail their ability to heal. Of course, cynics will comment that the best way to shut down or derail an enemy's ability to heal is to batter them with weapons fire until their hull hits 0, and once they're dead, they're not healing at all. Swings and roundabouts. Aside that, your bridge layout is Commander Science, Lieutenant Commanders in Science and Engineering, and a Lieutenant in the Tactical Station, which basically translates to you have minimal offensive power. If you use your Ensign tactical slot to deploy TAC team, as I have as a counter for example, bulk boarding parties, then you've got your lieutenant slot, and your options are basically overload 2, fire at will 2, high yield and spread, again grade 2 above those, or the various attack patterns. I've gone for attack pattern beta, not so much because it will boost my damage, but because of what happens if you then mix that with an escort making a full-on attack run with attack pattern alpha, rapid fire 3, high yield 3, yeah. Fun times, unless of course you're on the receiving end, in which case perhaps not so much. Consoles, 2 tacticals, 4 science, 3 engineering. This is very much a standoff and support ship from the ground up. So if you're going to try and fly it in an offensive, aggressive build, bluntly you're doing it wrong. Anyway, first half of the generators are gone, kick up to full impulse, taking a very long loop round. Yes, the Atrox really does handle this badly, to the extent that I'm going to try an engine brake out of full impulse, cut the thrust, mess it up, and then vaguely get it right. The idea, of course, was to use 0 thrust at full impulse to come to a rapid stop, then disengage full impulse, and then ramp and accelerate the throttles up to the speed I wanted. I call it engine braking, I don't know what anyone else calls it. It's as good a term as any. Again, this is more of the same. This is actually a really good pug, it has to be said. Normally what you get, of course, is one person barrels in, goes all out on the first nanite generator, blows it with the other 3 at 100%, so you're left fending off a wave of enraged Borg from the gateway in the middle, whilst your teammates are frantically trying to clear out the remaining 3 generators and the transformer before you run out of ways to either slow down, push back, or just stop the nanite waves coming in and messing up the optional objectives. This size being a little scrappier, but it's normal mode. I think we all overgear this, honestly. I mean, most of those ships are chucking around anti-proton beams, which tends to suggest at least Mark 11 epics, possibly higher. Jirai and I probably both did the same thing, just gutted a science vessel or a cruiser and bolted whatever parts we had handy on to get the carriers functional as trial runs. And generally everyone seems to know their stuff. I'm actually really rather impressed. So, gravity well in, just to further delay the nanite drones. You can see them getting messed about over there. And the aft weapons, not quite an optimal fit. I'm a little too close for the torpedo tube. You can see it firing there. Just polish off the transformer, come around 3-point turn to get the forward weapons to bear. Can't do it in time, but finish off the remaining spheres, tractor 1 to hold it in place, mutual tractor in fact, and keep rolling forwards, because of course there's now a massive tactical cube less than 12 kilometers behind me, and I really don't want to be here for much longer. For those of you who've noticed, of course, my UI is more than a little bit scrappy. This isn't just because it's a new ship and I was in a rush. A bug has crept in, and this is May 2012, in case anyone that can actually bother to look at this later on once it's been fixed. That means that you often can't drag powers to the power tray, which is really, really awkward. You can still get to your bridge officers, you can still get to your weapons, because those have their own little sections of the UI. But captain powers and equipment like deployable turrets and fighter bays, I actually had a bit of a struggle trying to get the fighter bays and the deployable turrets on standby into the tray. In the end I just gave up and didn't bother with sensor scans, so this isn't an optimal run by any means. We are onto the gateway now. Attack pattern beta's in play, just boosting everyone else's damage. And yes, there's relatively little of note here. This isn't a complex fight by any means. It's probably the easiest of the space task forces. We'll trigger the fighters again, send a fresh wave in. You can sustain 2 waves of 3 fighters each per hangar bay, so potentially you can have up to 12 stalkers or advanced stalkers in space at any given time. For those of you wondering why you apparently have an inexhaustible supply of fighters, I have only one thing to say: industrial replicators. Instead of tea, Earl Grey, hot, it's more like Stalker fighter, fully loaded, hot. Or cold, depending on your taste or how you like your air conditioning. Pilots obviously are a little more complex, but hey, bit of creativity with the transporter buffer. Just save the pattern next time you beam your best pilot up and copy him a few times. Okay, there's going to be a little confusion and there might be some ethical objections to what is essentially photocopying your crew, but given that their life expectancy is currently 48 seconds, who's going to live long enough to complain? Next wave is in, again give the attack order just to make sense. They've actually tightened this up as well. Way back in the days when fighters first came in with the initial release and the Vaucouve carrier, you couldn't order them about very easily. They tended to just act like, I suppose, drone weapon platforms is the best way to put it. They would go for your target and they would try and kill it. These days you've got a little more flexibility, so if you look at the bottom right hand corner you can see the 4 icons above the weapons display. From left to right that's attack my target, defend my target, intercept my target, and return and orbit me. So with the tactical cube on we have the final change that's come in. Your personalised loot spawns on top of you rather than on top of the starbase as it normally does. I'm not sure that's an improvement actually, because you have to go over to the starbase anyway to pick up the bonus bag if you get the objective. So, yeah, not sure that's an advantage. So that has been the Atrox class carrier. It's been very much a first look, and I might do something more polished later on once I've got the UI fixed. But either way, I'll see you next time.